The cargo bay of Station Nexus 7 reeked of industrial waste and discarded dreams. Among the twisted metal and broken machinery, something moved, a small, trembling form with 6 limbs and crystalline eyes that reflected the harsh fluorescent lights above. Sarah was a Zithian, one of the lowest castes in the galactic hierarchy. Her species had been conquered 3 generations ago, their planet strip-mined for resources, their people scattered across the cosmos as laborers, servants, and worse. The other species called them vermin to parasites. The filth beneath our feet. Even the enlightened Confederation of United Worlds had done nothing. To stop the systemic degradation of her kind, she huddled against a rusted container, her chitinous exoskeleton cracked and leaking the blue-green hemolymph that passed for blood in her species. The Draxian overseer had thrown her here after she'd collapsed during her 16th consecutive shift in the recycling center. Useless vermin, he'd spat, his 4 eyes gleaming with disgust. Die here with the rest of the trash. Sarah's mandibles clicked weakly. She was only 12 cycles old, barely an adolescent by Zethian standards. Her mother had died in the asteroid mines. Her father had simply disappeared one day, probably sold to some distant colony. She'd been alone ever since, moving from station to station, taking whatever work would keep her alive for another day. Now, even that was ending. The sound of boots on metal made her antennae twitch. She pressed herself deeper into the shadows, expecting another Draxian or perhaps a Corellian enforcer, coming to finish what starvation had started. Instead, she saw something that made her freeze in confusion. A human. Neo moved through the cargo bay with the careful steps of someone who knew these spaces well. He was young for his species, perhaps 20 standard years, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and eyes that seemed to catch every detail. Humans were rare on the outer stations. Their homeworld Earth had only joined the galactic community 2 decades ago, and most kept to their own systems. He stopped when he saw her. Sarah's translator implant picked up his soft exhale. Oh, hell. She waited for the disgust, the hatred, the casual cruelty she'd learned to expect from every sapient species in the galaxy. Instead, Neo knelt down slowly, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. Hey there, he said softly. Are you hurt? The question was so unexpected that Sarah's translator took a moment to process it. No one asked if vermin were hurt. No one cared. Why? She managed to rasp through her mandibles, her voice a clicking whisper. Neo's brow furrowed. Why what? Why do I care if you're hurt? He shook his head, something like anger flashing across his features, but not directed at her. Because you're a person. Because you're bleeding and alone in a trash heap, and that's wrong. Sarah's crystalline eyes focused on him with new intensity. In all her short life, no one had called her a person before. I am Zethian, she said, as if that explained everything, as if it justified everything. I can see that, Neo replied, moving closer. I'm Neo, human, and I'm going to help you if you'll let me. Over the following week, Sarah learned that humans were strange. Neo smuggled her into his quarters, a tiny maintenance worker's cabin that somehow felt larger than any space she'd ever inhabited. He fed her protein paste designed for Zythian physiology, which he'd traded 3 days of rations to obtain. He fabricated splints for her cracked carapace using scraps from his workshop, but more than that, he talked to her, asked her questions, listened to her answers as if they mattered. On Earth, Neo told her one evening, we had a dark period in our history. We divided ourselves by superficial differences, skin color, geographic origin, cultural practices. We enslaved each other, killed each other, told ourselves that some humans weren't really people at all. His jaw clenched. It nearly destroyed us. We learned, eventually, that personhood isn't something you earn or prove. It's inherent. It's sacred. Sarah clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. The other species say humans are soft, weak, that you anthropomorphize everything, even creatures that shouldn't be elevated. Neo laughed, a sound that vibrated pleasantly through Sarah's sensory hairs. Yeah, they say that. But you know what? I'd rather be too soft than too cruel. I'd rather err on the side of compassion than on the side of indifference. As Sarah healed, she began to help Neo with his work. She discovered that her 6 limbs and small size made her perfect for accessing the tight spaces in the station's mechanical systems. Neo taught her about engineering, about the beautiful logic of machines and the satisfaction of fixing things that were broken. 3 months after Neo found her in the trash, the station administrator discovered their arrangement. The Corellian official loomed over them both, his scales rippling with indignation. You're harboring vermin in violation of station regulations. The creature must be disposed of immediately. Neo stood between Sarah and the administrator, his stance defiant despite the size difference. Her name is Sarah, she's my apprentice and my friend, and if you want to dispose of her, you'll have to go through me. She's not a person under Confederation law, the Corellian hissed. Then your law is wrong, Neo said flatly. We humans have a saying, an unjust law is no law at all. I won't follow any regulation that treats a sapient being as garbage. The standoff attracted attention. Other humans on the station, a small but growing community, came to see what was happening. To Sarah's amazement, they stood with Neo. Engineers, traders, scientists, all forming a protective circle around her. The administrator eventually backed down, though not without threats. But something had shifted. Sarah wasn't invisible anymore. Word spread through the galactic networks. The story of a human who risked everything for a Zethian vermin became a strange sort of legend. It sparked debates, protests, and eventually a movement. Humans began advocating loudly for Zethian rights, leveraging their growing political influence in ways that made the established powers uncomfortable. Years later, when Sarah stood before the Confederation Council as the first Zethian representative in history, she thought about that day in the trash heap, about the human who'd seen a person where everyone else saw vermin. Neo sat in the gallery, grinning with pride. Sarah's translator hummed as she addressed the council. They called us vermin. They threw us away. But one human showed us that love, compassion, and justice are not weaknesses. They are the truest measures of civilization. She clicked her mandibles in the Zethian expression of deep emotion. And perhaps that's why humanity will outlast us all. Not because they're stronger or smarter, but because they refuse to stop seeing the person in everyone they meet. The vote for Zethian personhood rights passed that day. It was just a beginning, but it was enough. In the end, humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their tenacity. It was their stubborn, relentless, beautifully irrational insistence on treating everyone, even those the galaxy called vermin, with dignity and love. Because that, more than anything, was what it meant to be human.